In this video, you'll learn how to seek out and find your next mentor, how to start a conversation with them, and then how to turn a one-time conversation into a long-term, meaningful relationship. Hello, we're here for 8 unedited minutes about mentoring in the entrepreneurship space. I'm here with Barbara Rasgoni, founder of Corey West Media, PR and marketing expert. Thank you so much for being here, Barbara.
Thank you for having me, Carter. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. I'd love to jump right in. Our last conversation, you mentioned you started your business in a different way than most people. Right. And a common theme that you had throughout was powerful female role models. Just throughout your entire life, how did that kind of mentoring affect you starting a business?
Well, it's a great question. And what happened, the reason I decided to start my business was I was a corporate trainer for a company owned by Blue Cross and Blue Shield. I loved my job and I was doing great. I was getting sales results of up to 400% in a lot of areas, which blew me away because I was telling them to sell life insurance, not health insurance. Long story. Yeah. But I woke up on Mother's Day, my very first Mother's Day ever, in a hotel in St. Louis, all by myself without my baby. And I thought, I don't think this is how moms are supposed to spend Mother's Day. So I went through a career counseling and I decided, I'd figure out what I should be when I grow up, and they said a florist or a writer. So I should have been a garden writer. I have sold garden writing articles. But I was introduced to this woman who was a mentor. Her name was Sharon. She lived in Oak Park, as did I. And she said, oh, you could totally do this. You can start your business. And I thought, I can. So I joined the Independent Writers of Chicago, and there were a lot of women who were mothers who had older children, and all of them said, you can do this. You can start your business. And I thought, I can. So I started my business, and it was really exciting. There weren't very many other women business owners that I knew of, but it was a lot of fun, and it gave me an opportunity to really balance out my life. And I really feel like I chose the exact right path, and if I hadn't had those friends who were telling me you could do this, I don't know if I would have had the just really the motivation and also the courage.
How did you come across, or find, if you were seeking them, or if they found you, come across, how did you come across your first few mentors that you really recognized as mentors?
Well, I looked for people who really had been successful, and I wanted, if they already had a successful business, I wanted to know how they did it. And it could have been like my partner I had, she was a graphic designer, we worked together. She lived near me, and we talked about our businesses, and we were both raising kids. We met each other in our play group. That's how we met. We met when our kids were 6 weeks old. Yeah, and so she and I built a business together, and we would kind of share ideas and keep each other going, and we were quite successful together.
So it was a two-way street where you were mentoring and helping each other?
Correct.
What advice would you give for entrepreneurs or female entrepreneurs if they wanted to go out, they didn't have what you had? They're not surrounded by them. What would you suggest as that first piece of advice for an entrepreneur to go find, at least create one mentoring experience?
Well, I think you need to get a gut check on whether or not you want to be an entrepreneur is the first thing. Okay. It's not easy. It's worth it, totally worth it, but there is a lot involved. It depends on what kind of work you want to do. If you want to be somebody who's an independent communications consultant, as I was, I used to teach a class called Right from the Start, WRITE. Nice. From the Start. Yes, it was. And I went to a networking event in Chicago last month, and a person who took my class 20 years ago thanked me because they're still a professional writer and they're doing really well. So that's a little bit different than saying I'm an entrepreneur who wants to have a retail shop, or if you want to do a startup in tech. But really find someone who has taken the business model that you want to pursue and ask them, how did it work, and get a feel for, do you have what it takes? You can also work for someone like that, even volunteer, or ask if you can shadow them for a day, so you can really get a feel for what happens.
And if I hear right, a key point here, I love that you use these words, business model, not necessarily a florist. Well, it could be online, it could be brick and mortar, it could be anything.
Right.
But the business model is what they need to model.
Exactly, yeah, and things are changing every day in the business world, so the way you get business is really important. And what a lot of businesses don't know is that email is important. You need to have a list. That's a very basic piece of business advice. You need to have a list of customers. It sounds really simple. It's common sense, but until you really understand that and how you're going to build upon it, then you might not even get started.
And that's where mentoring comes in, right?
Exactly, yeah.
When someone comes across, when they do that initial outreach for a business owner, what's the best way for them to start that outreach with? I find somebody on LinkedIn or online, I get their email address, somehow I get access to messaging them. What should they do? Where do they start with? They're at their computer looking at the keyboard, or should they pick up the phone? What would you say? If I wanted to, model you and talk about what you did, where would I even start?
I would say the easiest thing is if they're speaking somewhere, go see if you can say that you're going to be there and ask if you can grab some coffee, a break. That's one way if you really want to get face-to-face time with them. Another way is to read what they've done with their business. A lot of times entrepreneurs will talk about how they built their business, so research that. If they've bought a book, read the book, and then ask questions that really pop up and really are important to you. I know I've had people reach out to me, so I've written blog posts about how to start a communications consultancy. So if people ask me, I can say, read this first. If you have other questions, please get in touch with me.
So that's an important part, to save a little bit. I was going to say save face, but maybe even save a little bit of embarrassment of don't do your research so you don't ask a question that they answered last week on their blog. Yeah,
that's true, but I wouldn't want you to hesitate from contacting someone that you really admire, because entrepreneurs put a lot of work in, and that's a very lonely business. Sometimes, you're by yourself, and your clients may say you do a great job, but they may be the only ones that are really watching you, and it might only be one or two people. So it's really gratifying to know that someone thinks that you're worth talking to.
Since you've been in business for a while, why, because this is a question I know a lot of people have, is why would someone give back to me if I'm just getting started? Why do people give back? Why do successful entrepreneurs take the time to mentor? Because it's free. It's their time, but it's not free. It's their time, so it's an investment. For the people wondering, why would someone even talk to me? Why is that?
Well, I think what you want to do is you recognize the spark. And to me, the passion that someone has when they want to start a business is infectious, and you want that to stay alive. And you also want to give them good guidance if they'll take it. One of my favorite jobs I had was I was the PR person for the Glen Ellen Economic Development Corporation. So for 5 or 6 years, every time someone opened a new business, I was the first person in to give them marketing advice and write their press release. And it was really fun to just see what was going on in their minds, how they were setting things up. And I feel like if that's really something you want to do, if you can find someone who can be a cheerleader for you and say, that's a great idea, because a lot of times family and friends will say, what, are you nuts? But you might have a really good idea. And until you talk to someone else who's really made it fly, how do you know if you can make your idea fly?
Okay, I see that now. For the last 2 questions.
Okay.
What's one mistake people should avoid when seeking mentors or trying to create a mentoring relationship? What's one key mistake of just don't do this?
I would say talking to someone for the wrong reason, and that might be, oh wow, they have a great social media following, I want to know how they do that, and that's fine. I mean, you could ask them that, but really figure out what you want to know and why you want to know it. So you don't want to waste their time, but you also want to feel valuable about it. I think another thing is, I know I've gone to lunch with people and given them time and ideas, and I had one lunch where I said, well, I just gave you a $500,000 idea, which I know it was, but I didn't get like a thank you note or a follow-up or anything. And I didn't really need that, but I just thought it might have been nice to say, I enjoyed our conversation or something, so follow up with them.
And for the other side of the coin, what is one thing that anyone should do if they're going to just get started with the mentoring relationship, or maybe they're watching and they have one right now? What's one thing that helps that relationship grow?
That helps mentoring
the mentoring relationship grow, whether it's new or they've been meeting for a month, for 2 years. What's one thing someone should do for that mentor?
As a mentor.
As a mentee to a mentor.
Okay, what I would do is I would check in every week to see if they're on target, or every month, whatever you want to do, whatever feels good to you, because you want to let them know that you care. And if you really do care, it doesn't take that much to send an email and say, hey, I was just thinking of you. How are things going? And I know for me, I've had friends who've challenged me and say, if you make that one phone call and they're kind of mentoring me, then good things will happen. And you know what? When I made the one phone call, my whole world changed. So sometimes it's somebody following up saying, did you make that phone call? Did you do this? Did you do that? And it doesn't take a lot. And it's so gratifying to see people take off and achieve their dreams. It just is very fulfilling for everyone, you and them.
That's a perfect ending. Thank you so much for being here, Barbara.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.